Hello everyone. Today we'll be learning about the finite automata with outputs. So there are two types of finite automata with outputs. One is called as the Morse machine and one is called as the Millis machine. So let us go about with the Morse machine. In the next video I'm also recording the next video for the Millis machine. So let us go about it. The Morse machine has each and every output, or you can say input state has a fixed output. It is represented by 6 tuples: the q, sigma, the capital delta, the small delta, the lambda, and q0 as the initial state. The finite set of states, which is represented by q, is given by an example is given by q0, q1, q2, and so on till qn. The input alphabets can be any input alphabets which you like to test. For example, A and B, or for example the binary numbers 0 and 1. The output alphabets, it is always depends on what you want the output to be. For example, 0 and 1 in this case. The transition function is a product between the sigma and q, which is the input alphabet sigma, and the input states, which is represented by the transition table. If you notice in this line, the entire thing q0, q1, q2, q3 are this q, and if you notice the input states are 0 and 1 in this case, so that is represented by sigma. For each state, you can see that there is always an output for it. This is given by a transition table. Now, how do we read the transition table is, if you see Q0 with an input of 0 goes to Q3. Q0 with an input of 1 goes to Q1. If you repeat in this process, you can notice the others also is the same. Similarly, if you notice Q2 with 0 goes to Q2, Q2 with 1 goes to Q3, and for Q2, the output is 0. Now, the transition table can also be represented by a transition diagram. So let us take an example of the transition diagram, how it is done. So this will be your transition diagram. So how do we represent it is by taking all the states Q0, Q1, Q2, Q3 in a diagrammatic representation, that is Q0, Q1, Q2, and Q3. Now, if you notice here is Q0 has an output of 0. Similarly, Q1 has an output of 1. So 0, 1, 0, 0. This can be represented in the diagram by giving a 0, 1 and underline it, and 0 and 0. Now, how do we make the transition is Q0 with an input of 0 gives to Q3. So we can make it like this. Q0 goes to Q3 with an input of 0. Repeat the same process. Q0 with 1 goes to Q1. Q0 with 1 goes to Q1. So we can also do Q1 with 0 goes to Q1. Q1 with 0 goes to Q1. Q1 with 1 goes to Q2. Again, Q2 with 0 goes to Q2, and Q2 with 1 goes to Q3. Similarly, Q3 with 0 goes to 0, and Q3 with 1 goes to Q0. So this is how a transition diagram is represented. So if you notice the output functions can also be represented by lambda. For example, lambda of Q0 will be giving you the output as 0. So we can always represent it like this. Lambda q0 is giving you 0. Lambda q1 is represented by 1. Lambda q2 is represented by 0. And lambda q3 is represented by 0. So this is how a Morse machine is represented. Thank you for watching.